So, I'm also going to share some of the things that we really stuffed up on during this talk. And one of those things was scope. Who's done a really big redevelopment where you've got a couple of hundred sites or a big site with thousands and thousands of pages and you've got to make it better? Yep. Okay, scope creeps, hey? And it's really hard to not. And I'm not sure if any of you have heard of a theory called designing wide. Have anyone heard of designing wide? Designing wide is my new favourite theory as a web nerd. So what designing wide says, it's okay to have your website, you know, and in the web team you look after the look and feel and all of that sort of stuff of the website. But what happens when you get to have to log on to the intranet or the student reporting system or the payroll leave system or something like that, and all of a sudden you're back in some Lotus Notes horrible environment or something like that? So designing wide says, actually look at the big picture, because your end user doesn't really understand the difference between what's the website and what's an online system. They just know it's online and it's on the internet, so it's your job as the web nerd to fix it. We had some success with this, and we had some also fails. Okay, I've spoken a little bit about why we're going to redevelop already, so I'm going to skip through this slide. But I guess the most important thing to know is that we had the VC's ear, the Vice Chancellor's ear, and we had his direct authority to do things. Yay. I don't know if it's a good idea to, this is going to be tricky. Sorry, I'm so not a Mac person. I'm just going to go back to my USB drive to play the video. Pam, can you be my beautiful assistant? And Pam. Yeah, no, this will be the last one, I promise, after this is finished. So what I'm going to show you now is the video that my manager made to take to the senior staff conference every year at QUT. All the heads of faculties and some other really important people get together and they go on a retreat. I'm told they do play guitar and have a bit of a sing-along at the end. And Eamon, my boss, he really wanted to try and get people to understand how bad it was. Now, it should, yeah. Oh. It's a flash file, but it's just done as an to play straight away. Oh, this will be really upsetting if I can't get this to play. Anyone got any ideas? Any Mac gurus here? Drag it into Chrome. Will that work? Excellent. Oh, yeah? Oh, no, right click. So anyway, what Eamon did was he took a screenshot of every homepage that we could find really quickly, and he set it to the Benny Hill theme. And he took it to the Senior Leadership Conference and played it. I'd really like to play it for you now. Yay! So as you can see, we've got multiple styles. We've got some that don't even have any style. Some of these sites haven't been updated since, 1999. That's quite a lot, right? There's 178 more. And we found another about 400 websites once we started properly auditing things like the domain name registry and things like that. Accounts, because a lot of people hadn't registered their domain on the registry, but you went through paid accounts and we retrieved people's web, things that they'd assigned for web. And there was a lot of extra domain names there as well. So, isn't it? And this is the worst case of website proliferation that I've ever seen. It really was bad. And some people really took offence at this at the senior team leadership meeting. I actually wouldn't recommend this unless you know everyone really, really well, because some people got really affronted. And in a university, the more you publish, apparently, the better you are quite often. There's that real feeling of getting stuff out. Okay, I'll go back to that. Yeah. So what I wanted to say is, you can see that there were a lot of conference, or you might not have realised, but there were a lot of conference sites up there in relation to scope creep. We had to kill those because we just had too many. So we had this amazing plan and this perfect theory about how we were going to make these fantastic sites for future students, future staff. And most of you, if some people said you worked at a university, you'll know that in Australia, we're not looking for more people to come to uni. All our universities are full, pretty much. What we're looking for as universities now, because we're very competitive with each other, is getting the best bums on seats that we can. And our websites were not attracting those bums. Okay, so what we thought we'd use, we'll have some strategy, we'll get some goals going, we'll use some personas. We wanted to use a lot of best practice, if you like. We wanted to have a lot of dynamic content that was reusable. And, oh, that's right, initially we only got 9 months, I forgot that. Obviously, that timeline extended to 18 months, and there's still some elements that haven't been finished. Right. Okay, sounds peachy, right? Wrong. In the auditing process, we had to determine which sites were in and out of scope. Initially, according to the Vice-Chancellor, all sites were in scope, but it was just too big a job. Trying to audit more than 1,000 websites, work out what the even just working out who the content owner and who's going to fact-check that information was quite, and I've got the spreadsheets that we created, they're up to, 90,000 lines of, each page. We went through and audited each page. So how did we even estimate resources? Well, I'm not sure how Eamon did it initially, but when we had finished the auditing process and we realised how much content there was there to go through, we worked out that every one of my content editors would have to rewrite 30 to 50 pages every single day. And as you know, when you're rewriting content, half the time you've got to understand what they're actually trying to say so you can, convert it to plain language. It really wasn't possible. Big oops. Okay, so some of the things that worked for us was, let's define content so no one can say, oh, that's an image, it's not content. So we define content as text, PDFs, all types of documents, photos, graphics, videos, animations, audio. We wanted to try and say everything is content if it's viewable, language and audio, etc. We also said that our content must do these things. It must help recruit high calibre students. It's got to promote the uni and all the research that we do. It's got to help recruit staff and encourage our alumni to stay in touch with us. And of course, we've got to communicate our key information and fulfil our legal requirements. Oops. We thought we'll define the top tasks. Has anyone done this for a government or a university site? It's generally really easy. So I used to work at the Department of Justice and Attorney General in Queensland. Everyone came there to get births, deaths and marriages certificates, right? That was the main thing. That accounted for about 80% of the traffic on that website. Another 5 or 10% of it was people looking for a JP or a commissioner, someone who could witness their legal documents. Hardly anyone wanted to know when the court times were and which judge was doing what when. So for university, of course, the top 10 tasks are, I want to find a course. I want to apply for that course. I want to find a job or something, and then I want to find research. Okay, so we identified those. And then I have to give credit to this, most of this work to my colleague, Diana Keogh. She wrote the best tone of voice guidelines I've ever seen. They are simple and straightforward. We teach complicated ideas and theories, but we explain them in clear, simple language. Everyone knows the Einstein quote, don't they? You don't know something very well until you can explain it to your grandma. Yeah. The QUT marketing and comms team, they call it barbecue speak. How would you explain this to somebody at a barbecue who's a peer? You know, he's not an idiot. Do you know what I mean? So you're not going to use really, you know, boring language, but you're going to explain it in barbecue speak. You're not going to use too much geeky terminology. And we had a little test to see, are we meeting this? If I say it out loud, do I sound like a dork? If I do, fail, rewrite. Okay? All right. And we had a quick little list of do's and don'ts. I'll mention this again later, but the more clear that you can be for your content editors and your fact checkers about what you're trying to achieve and how you're doing it, the better. Be really clear. And use that writing for the web skills to explain yourself. So be concise, be consistent. Yep. All right. Oh, here we go. Strong direction makes editors happy. So here's my content team pretending to be dinosaurs with the little tattoos, fake tattoos on their hand. So make it crystal clear. We were really determined that we knew what we wanted to do, primarily because most of us had worked in the web for a really long time and had very, very little power on controlling the direction of projects. Most of you will know your boss says we need this, or someone complains and so you react, or someone says this needs to go up on the web but they're not sure why and who's it for, that sort of stuff. At this time we actually had the power to say, actually, from a content point of view and from a project point of view, these are the things that we need to understand. So not everyone's the same. We split our audiences up into future students, future staff, future partners. So that's our external facing public website, internet. And then we had an intranet for students and a separate intranet for staff. Now using the power of, we used SquizSuite to deliver this. You'd be able to do the same thing with Drupal and many other content management systems. Harness the power of your database, right? Publish once, appear in multiple spots. We had a global section in the database, so that was content that was going to appear on all 3 sites. It might not have appeared in the same way because we would have said for students only show the heading and the context sentence or something and the link back to the service, don't show the extra information for staff. We did all of that through content modelling. I'll talk a little bit about that soon. Okay, structure by user task, not by department, faculty or school. Yay! Everyone's happy about that one. Yes. Great question, actually. How did we do this? We did exhaustive usability testing. So whenever anyone said to us, oh, look, Jill, you know, I really want to use pedagogy instead of teach, I go, actually, we've tested that. And really, everyone prefers teach. Even academics, when they're reading online, prefer the word teach because it's easier for them to understand quickly. Courses, easy, simple, beautiful. That was our high-level aim to deliver courses. Now, we did fairly well with this. There's still some tricky bits, but I'm pretty happy with how courses turned out. Again, extensive usability testing, both with Australian students and international students, because some of you might not be aware, but all the money in education in Australia is from international students. Okay, so research. We solve real issues and make others want to be a part of it. So that's our brand promise as well, you know, university for the real world. And deliver substance, style, and our brand. Okay, so we wanted to make sure as we were travelling through this process that we were getting it right, so we tested it. When we did the usability testing, we didn't use fake content, we used real content, right? And I can't, you know, iterate how important it is to use real content when you're doing usability testing. Your content editors can go back straight away and tweak for words that didn't work very well, but your usability testing gives you a much more real result, I think. Tricky content that you're not sure, I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, just test it. Right? So we had the ability for anyone in the team to conduct testing. We would just go and find students and pay them $25. We had little Coles vouchers. Students love that. Do you know what I mean? And things like that. Sometimes we did have trouble recruiting. And you know, there's good days and bad days in usability testing. You know, you have some days when no one turns up, and then you have some days where everyone turns up, and so all the tests go over time. We also test multiple versions to see which one would work better. And then when somebody said, oh, you know, again, I really think you should use pedagogy here, I'm going, well, actually, I've tested both, and you can see that Teach works a lot better. All right, so how do we test? The normal ways. I'm sure you guys know this stuff. If you don't, feel free to ask me afterwards about user testing or usability testing. One of the things we had with our content was, if we're not sure it should be there, let's test that again too. One of the things that happened was, because the project went on for a while, we were able to publish content that we'd written early on the existing site. And a lot of that content was to do with applying and getting credit for recognition of prior learning, which QUT calls advanced standing. Right, they've got their own word for it just to make it that bit easier to nail. So what we did was we published the new content, and then a couple of months later, when we're getting student business services, you know, they're the people, the admin people that have been doing admin for 25 years, and they live and breathe admin. A fantastic amount of knowledge, but they really feel like the whole policy has got to be published with the procedure and the guidelines before you can come and talk to me. Right? And we just need to say, do you know what I mean? If you don't turn up, you could get failed for being absent. Do you know what I mean? That's all we really need to say. Check this policy if you want more details. Anyway, they were sort of freaked out a bit when we came to them with these 5, you know, documents they've had, and we've turned it into one sentence. If you don't turn up all the time, you may get failed for being an absentee student. And they were like, no. Can't do it. And we're actually, do you know what? We've actually already done it. Some of this content has been on your website now for 3 or 4 months. Have you had any complaints? No? Had any extra phone calls? No? Oh, it's probably okay then, hey? All right, so we sort of, by not publishing all at once, by having some bits published on the old site, we were able to prove that plain English wasn't a detriment to getting university work done. We also created a to-publish test, and oops, I'll just go back to that one. Does this content help meet our business goals? No, doesn't get published. Simple as that. Admittedly, there's more politics involved. I'm giving you a very simplified version. I did go home some days with no hair, big furrow frown. I also think in big migrations, many of you will have experienced this yourselves, it's really important to create a content template. That's because when you go to migrate, if you've got a really good template drawn up, you can get any monkey to come in and migrate. Do you know what I mean? You can get students to come in and help you. You can get you know, other admin staff. I had the director's secretary migrating for me when we were at full steam, because all she needed to do was basically do data entry off this template. The template includes things like the user journey. So as we wrote it, we were really sentient of how the user was going to progress through the site, we hoped. You can also just see here, I've got an area there for non-text content. So people that went even into the content template really tried to think of everything. Not sure if, you know, some bits we didn't do so well in, and I'll get to them in a minute. You guys all use Drupal or other different CMSs? Or use all Drupal? Do you guys do any content modeling, stuff like that? Excellent, I love you already. Okay, you probably won't need too much of this thing on content modeling then, but one of the things that really was great for us when we did the modeling was we realized how many elements were generic across all models. And of course that became our global metadata template, and that all of that content is metadata driven rather than static page driven. All right. Okay, this is one of our models, just an Excel spreadsheet. This is for events. So you can see here I'm looking at what's the friendly name of the event, description, attributes, all those sorts of things. Now, this is where I get on my little soapbox. I think that one of the biggest letdowns in the last few years, probably the last almost 8 years with web content management systems, has been that people still use them like they're using Dreamweaver. right? So all the pages are static. Quite often, people will publish things in more than one, the same information or item in more than one spot. Whoa, you're really not harnessing the power of your database with that. Databases can sing and dance. They can manipulate data in all sorts of ways. So make them sing and dance. Don't fall into that trap of, oh, this is how I learnt to do web and I'm still going to keep doing it. The real power of a database is in making that content, that single source of truth, publish once and appear in multiple places. I went a step further, because you know what it's like when you've got lots of authors in a university setting or a government setting. Everyone wants to write their own way, okay? And everyone has their own version of plain language, even if you can get them to do plain language. So I thought, well, you know, I've modelled out all of this stuff, and I know what all the elements are, and a lot of the answers can come from a drop-down or a tick box, a radio button box. So I built a form. And I built a form to add all sorts of content. You can add an event, you can add contacts, so into the contacts directory, services and facilities, scholarships and prizes, venues, student topics for research, key dates for the academic calendar, professional development for staff, and of course the high-level research projects. So everyone, when they go through, I think I've got a next page of that form, you can see here that it's a ticks box, and you can choose more than one, because, you know, some scholarships, some events, some research projects cover multiple faculties. So we gave people always the option to choose more than one. Then we've got some scripting behind that, which on the page it says, if I'm looking at a Faculty of Business page, we call it School of Business actually at QUT, if I'm looking at a School of Business page, and in the little scholarships box on the side, it's just got a script saying, call me all the scholarships that apply to Faculty of Business. And then I've got that again on the undergrad page, and I've got it on the postgrad page, and I've got the special ones applying to research and things like that. I can't express how beneficial it was to have these forms, because people would go, oh, there's content missing, do you know what I mean? And it's like, we're going live next week. No problem, fill out the form, it'll come to me in a workflow, I'll tick it off. I know I'm going to get really consistent content from you as well, because I'm only allowing you to write about 4 fields, like name of scholarship. All right, QAing content. You're thinking, wow, these people really did a lot, hey, but we really wanted to make sure that we delivered a good end result. This was, for many of us, the best opportunity to work with such a really fantastic team. And we thought, wow, do you know what I mean? It's how many times in our chances in our life we're going to give them, you know, a big bucket of money, like a really big bucket of money, to see how good we can do. So it was critical to us to make sure that we were going to achieve good results, hence all the usability testing and a lot of QAing. If you've got a team of 7 content editors and you keep coming out with spelling mistakes, lose respect straight away. All right, so we did a bit of work there. And as you can see, we QA'd for a number of different things. We QA'd for accessibility, styles. We checked all the links worked, and all the emails. You'd be surprised how many didn't that came through in content. Very important, some of those metadata fields that I was talking about before, which we developed through the content models, many of them were mandatory so that we could make the dynamic stuff work. So have they filled out their mandatory ones? After a while, I got smart and I just made the CMS have a validation, and it wouldn't publish anything that they weren't there. Jilly, you've spoken about a lot of stuff, but what was about the strategy? Okay, this is part of the strategy that we wrote. If people like, I'm happy to do a bit of a hands-on workshop tomorrow to maybe think about writing some strategy for your organisation, or also maybe thinking about tone of voice or those types of things, or even a content test. What are the business goals of my department, university, whatever, and then I can test my content based on that. So you can see here that we said a key component of this strategy is getting our content into shape. This is the higher level strategy, the web redevelopment project, the QUT web transformation strategy. And so we had in the high level document, content's really important, fed down to this lower level document. And we also changed the strategy slightly between the public site and the 2 sites for staff and students. So this is our strategy. Our content is aligned with our customers' needs, our business goals and our brand. It meets online communication best practice and it's supported by customer research. Pretty clear there. I also added a little bit of slightly operational stuff in this next one. The content team also aims to say it once, but say it well, and only publish content that is both needed and used. So, there is a chance that when the VC and a few other people were approving this, they weren't fully sure what was going on. No problem. They approved it and we could do it. We also tried to outline the benefits of a content strategy and of really thinking about content in a best practice context. So it's going to ensure that our goals are incorporated into these new websites, and it's going to support the brand, our business goals and benefits by meeting these needs, ensuring we're concise and consistent and accurate, enabling ease of future maintenance. How many times you've been part of a web redevelopment project and then you become part of the operational team later and you go, oh my God, what have I done? I've just built rods for my back. Do you know what I mean? Crosses to bear. I could have done that much more simply. Again, I'd encourage you to see what benefits you can get from using a database instead of a static website. So one of the things that I did for the QUT site for news and events was they have an expiry date and they disappear once that date occurs. I don't ever have to. The other thing I did, this is one of the biggest tips I can give you from my shared experience, we wrote 2 sets of content for every event, pre and post. At midnight, when the event finished, it just reverted to the post content. And none of my content team had to go back and say, change every is to was, do to did, you know, that type of stuff, that type of maintenance that makes you want to stab yourself in your eye with your mouse. Yeah. See what the database can do to eliminate that, have much happier web staff. Okay. So we also listed what we would do, how we're going to implement this strategy. So we're going to work with customers and stakeholders. We'll do the templates, we'll do the testing, the auditing, the blah, 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 blah. Most of the stuff I've already gone through. And we included this ongoing element. Regularly reviewed content, published in one place only, measured and analysed. So all our top tasks had to have Google Analytics to go with it. So very important. And of course, tweaked over time. No website should be final, as we all know. This is a bit where I get to be funny. So we've got, 90,000 pages on a spreadsheet and we've whittled it down to 10 or something like that, and we're busily rewriting them, and it comes to the time where I'm starting to send out emails to people asking them to fact check it. There's a lot of things to say in a fact checking email. The first one was 3 pages long. And that is the look that people had on their faces when they got it. And quite often I'd be sending them 10, 20, 30 pages to review at a time as well. Okay. We had a bit of an evolution with our fact-checking email. I managed to get it a bit more concise, down to 2 pages, but still wasn't very good. But, where am I going? Went a bit fast, sorry. So this is the final one, and it is still 2 pages long, but only about 1.5 really. Okay, and the first heading that people see is what we need you to do, and there's only 3 points. Right? So fact check the new content. Don't you love it when you send fact checking for people and they're like, oh, I'm really not sure how you've done this sentence and stuff. I'm like, I really don't care about that. Can you tell me if it's correct? Do you know what I mean? Did I accidentally change the meaning when I edited it? And a lot of our first emails were talking about that. So really just trying to say, look, just tell me if it's right or wrong. We can discuss semantics about language later. All right. How you can help us out? Go to the new site, have a click around. Can I say it was so much easier to get people to fact check once they could see it in a browser as compared to doing it on Word or Google Docs. Incredible difference. And in the future, I would always do it that way. I would always get the dev site ready, even if some of the styles aren't quite right and some of the template and layout's quite right. Get the text on there and then email those links off to people. It'll really, really help. Okay, we asked them to make some notes and then to send us to them. And we just said here, just a few little things to remember. Look, it's not 100% finished yet. So, you know, if you're clicking around and knows things weird, it's probably meant to be weird at this stage. Feel free to let us know, though. Flashing camels. You'll see that there's a paragraph here about flashing camels. One of the things that we did, if we got to a page and a style wasn't ready to add, like pull quotes, we didn't have the pull quote style ready, or there was an image missing or something like that, we stuck in a picture of a camel. After a couple of months, the camel sort of became different. So at first he just sort of blinked, and then he walked across the page and he did all these different things. So the shiny flashy camel was an asset ID number that we could search for across the entire farm, and any page or bit of content that came back to us showing there's a camel, we knew there was something to do on it. Really great tip for a big migration. All right. Finally, please don't send these links around. That didn't work. But we got such better success out of that third iteration of the fact-checking email, much better. You guys probably know these things. You know, just keep, with migration, just keep going at it, but don't start too soon and don't forget to template. What worked? The to publish test. Should we be publishing this content? Before we even start to rewrite it, is it going to meet business goals? Is there a legal requirement to do it? No. Shelve. All right. The reusable and dynamic content worked really well, except for with some pages where we had too much dynamic content and we caused load, speed, you know, detriments. So some things initially, like the contacts catalogue, were too big, and pages trying to load things out of the contacts catalogue didn't work really well. We ended up caching the whole contacts catalogue, and just pulling that from a cache was much quicker. So there are ways around it. Sometimes you only realise things when you get there. We were really lucky that we'd been using Google Docs a lot, because we got caught in the Brisbane floods, in 2011 floods, and 2 of QUT's campuses went down. Of course, the one that went down in the city was the one that had all the servers in the basement under the river. If we hadn't been using Google Docs, we would have had 2.5 weeks of no work. And that would have, you know, as you can imagine, really strung out our time frames. Shiny camels worked really, really well. Don't have a strict IA. Have an IA where the rule we had for IA was it had a primary home, but then it could be linked to or displayed in anywhere else it was appropriate. All right. Always use the template. Metadata is critical, you know that, but in a database system, it's even more critical, and I would really use that metadata to drive some of your page content. Don't lose sight of the goals. So why am I doing this? Oh, that's right, I'm doing this so that we get better students here, not to pander to somebody's ego or something like that. Okay? And little photo I took in China, everyone has duty to protect green. This is in the park. That's the same if you're a part of a web team. Everyone's got a duty to try and protect that user experience, meet those goals, trying to make sure you get a good return on investment for what you've spent and outlaid. It's everyone's role. All right, so how good did you go, Jilly? Well, we really did well. We had a 350% increase within 3 months of inquiries from international students. That's massive. You know, anyone who does SEO, or the dark arts as I still like to call it, would know that that's an incredible rate. We got a really big decrease in questions to the help desk and the service centre saying, I want to apply, but I'm not sure where to start, to more of, I'm in the application process and I'm at section D and I'm really not sure what you want me to stay here. I call those, for help desk and for call centres, less beginner calls and more educated calls, right? And of those educated calls, you're not getting as many as you did at the beginning. So that's a really good way to test whether your website content is having a really good impact on your business. Has it decreased the number of calls coming to the help desk or the service centre? And are those calls now educated rather than where do I start? All right. You'll actually find also too, just as a side benefit, sick leave goes down in your call centres because they're not bored out of their brains. Because I get 100 calls a day saying, where do I start? They get 30 going, I'm really confused about this bit. Much more interesting day at work. All right, so content matches the brand. I think we did fairly well with that. Of course, I'm not showing the QUT site at the moment. I know you're going to go home and have a look at it afterwards. See how easy it is to find a course for me. We didn't do so well in some things, I have to admit. Some things we didn't finish building. The scope crept, yeah, as I say here, Cecil B. DeMille got into on it, do you know what I mean? It became bigger than Ben-Hur. And there were a few times where as a team we really felt ourselves, I think the term that kids use these days is thrashing, do you know, but never actually achieving anything. So we had to really pull back. We ran it on an agile framework, methodology, and we just sat down and we went, look, what is the most important to get done? Right, find the course. Let's put our energy into that and we'll worry about the rest later. And then after we did that, okay, what's the next most important thing? And we just moved it down like that. And that's it for me. But I'm going to open it up to questions now. I think we've got, 10 minutes. Yay, me! Yeah.
When you say you roll this out, is it across many sites?
Yes.
Many different faculties, and they're all running Drupal, or is it only one?
Great question. We use Squiz Suite primarily just because it meets WCAG 2.0 a little bit better than most CMSs at the moment, although everyone's sort of getting a bit better. But the university, it was really clear that they had to meet WCAG 2.0. What we did was each faculty has a presence on each of the sites, staff, student and internet, and they have different content for those audiences. So everyone has been brought into a single, well, there's the three sites for each audience. And then underneath there, there's a site, do you know what I mean, about each faculty and then each research area and things like that. Sort of, it drills down quite deep.
Okay, so you just manage the Squiz Suite side of things, not each individual site. It was up to each team to suck the content.
Oh no. If we'd have waited for each faculty to do it, we'd still be waiting. Yeah, so in some ways we had to take almost a heavy-handed approach with some people. In the end, we realised that we couldn't bring all 6 faculties in at once. It was just way too big a job. And we had some faculties, not mentioning any names, education, that were a lot less mature with their existing web presence than other people, so they even took a lot longer to sort of get on board. And business school was the first faculty to go, and luckily they did such a great job, and we put a lot of energy and effort into making sure they were SMIC as, that all the other faculties were like, really want that, do you know what I mean? And we got them all in within about 8 months, yeah. But when we went live, it was just creative industries and business school that we had in. For the rest of the time, we were still linking out to their old sites, which is another way to make them go, can we migrate in? You know, because their old site looks quite tragic in comparison to the new one. Yeah. One thing we did do though was, even though we hadn't migrated their content in fully yet, we had their courses, we had their scholarships, we had their contacts, all of that stuff was all ready to go. It was just a matter of trying to get rid of the welcome message from the, you know, head of school and things like that. Yeah. Where we couldn't get rid of those, we buried them. Yeah.
Thanks for a really inspiring talk, Jilly.
Oh, thanks.
Can I just ask you to say something about what process you went through to get your list of top tasks? Was it the kind
Yep.
of doing big survey or something else?
Yeah, the long neck. Oh, sorry, yes. I'm meant to be repeating the questions back for the recording. So the question was, how do we go about determining what the top tasks were? We looked at search terms. We looked at what's currently the top content. That was really a struggle though, because as you can see, there was 1,000 sites. There wasn't one search for all of it. They each had their own. Some of them didn't even have one. So that data we had to have a bit of a gut feeling with it. We knew it wasn't 100%, but it was just an indicator. From there, we went back and looked at the business. Well, what does QUT really want to achieve from the internet site? Again, do you know what I mean? They had these clear business goals. Then we did some usability testing with people, and from that we determined, you know, that clearly the most top task for the external website was to find a course. Next one was to apply. The third one was to, what was it? Yeah, it might have been find a job or something like that. Believe it or not, one of the top 20, it didn't quite make the top 10, but we ended up including it anyway, was I want to give money to the university and I'm not sure how. Or I want to partner with the university in some research, or I want to get some of your cool people to help me, you know, your grads or something like that. Well, actually, that's really important. So even though it's not quite a top 10, we still really want that money. We want that research partnerships and things like that, and it's really helping. So we sort of included that one anyway. Yeah.
Have you seen the XKCD did a cartoon about university websites?
I have seen that, yes. Have I seen the XKCD, that cartoon? Yes, we all saw it, and most of us had it over our desks. Yeah, we'd often even sent that on to people, do you know what I mean, who had a good sense of humour in the university. Yeah. Hey.
I'm curious where design came into this whole process. Was it at the end or along the way? Or like how did it go from just a content strategy to a website?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, how did design come into this process? Our initial designs were paper prototypes or hand-drawn. We had grid books where, you know, we'd do the 7 columns or 9 columns I think we had, and we were sort of, you know, juggling those around. Yeah, we did them ourselves. And then about 5 months into the project, we employed a dedicated designer, and he's done a great job. If you go and look at the suite of 3 sites, they do look really funky, and none of it's too tricky. If that, you know, like one of the things we did have trouble was getting the servers to use the font we wanted. I don't know if you guys have come across that. So in the end, we went with Arial and Vidania like everyone else. Yeah. So some of our design things didn't come through, even though they tested well, just because they were technically too difficult. Yeah. Anyone else got a question? No.
Just a question about, I guess, so is it centrally managed now, or the web development, or do the faculty still do a bit of that, or do you find it's just content changes in the faculty and that's all they end up doing? So.
Great question. So the question is now, how's the QUT web presence managed? Is all of the web stuff done within a centralised web team, or do the faculty still get to have some control and input? Squiz Suite, like Drupal and many other content management systems, allows you to have a distributed authorship system. What we did was we allowed certain people to do certain things. So the marketing and comms officers and the events officers in the faculties, we allowed them the rights to update their pages. They can't make a new page. Maybe 1 or 2 people can that were quite web savvy, that we really felt they could do it. Really all they can do is edit existing content. And a lot of the new content that they'd wanted to be adding would go through one of the beautiful forms as well. So one of the benefits of having those forms is that anyone can add content to the website. It doesn't need to be a specific person with a specific role. Students can go and add news if they want. You know, I can go and add something for a faculty, even though I'm not in that faculty, just because I might have heard that someone's done something funky. I go, oh, congrats, you know, lecturer Rod Jones on your thing. There is an approval process for some of it. We have decided not to approve student news, let them just have their own news on their own site, because we can always pull it down, do you know what I mean, if we need to. But that's one of the few things that hasn't been delivered yet. So yeah, but yeah, most of the web development's still in that team to retain the design, the brand, and not get that too weakened by having it too distributed. Because I think there is a line there. I've just been doing some contract work at Griffith University. We'll have 5,000 distributed authors who can do whatever they want. And it's a mess. Yeah. And they are really struggling with a single point of truth and all of those things that they shouldn't be struggling with if they're using a web content management system. Yeah. Okay. Last question? No. Oh, look, I would like to say something. Oh, yeah, no, go for it.
How did the team recover?
Oh, I was hoping someone didn't ask this. So the question was, how did the team recover? About half of the team, or maybe 2/3, stayed on in an operational context. And about 1/3 of us moved on from QUT. I was one of the people that ended up moving on. There was about 6 months where I thought some of those people were just going to go home and never get out of bed. Do you know what I mean? Because you know what it's like when you're doing this fantastic project and then all of a sudden your inbox is full of, can you change the date on this page? And can you do that? And blah, 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 blah. Gone was the usability testing. Gone was the content rewriting. Gone was the, let's make up a fantastic rule to guide this in the future stuff. How they've managed that a bit better now. So they started doing a bit more usability testing. They set some time aside to keep going with the other things from the project that hadn't been finished yet. And that really improved morale as well. But yes, I think any manager should really carefully think about how they are going to make that transition from project to operational team. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming and seeing me or hearing me speak today. I know that these slides and the recording is going to be made available on the net within the next couple of weeks. And I wrote down my email address on the whiteboard. If you can read it, feel free to always send me an email. I might not get back to you within the same day or two, but I will always reply within a week if you've got any questions for me or want to know anything else. Clearly, you can see that this email address is really, really old because I didn't know much about usability when I used the word email in my email address. What's your email address on the phone? Okay, it starts with the word email. And then, you know, you fill in the form, do you know what I mean? That's why I put the quote marks around it because it has got the word email in it as well, not just email is Jilly. Anyway. Yeah, that's true. And Google's still in the top 10 search results of any website, isn't it? I was like, people searching for Google, why do they do that?
Do you happen to have a Twitter account?
Do I have a Twitter account? I do. Email me and I'll send it to you. It's Chinky Stickins.
Excellent. I was worried that I might have been attributing these things to someone else as I was live tweeting.
Right.
I was very confused.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, but yeah, Chinky Stickins, it's my DJ name, so yeah. I'm trying to only have one Twitter account. Don't know how that's going to go in the future for the long term. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference.